Hi, my name is Josephine Vitta. I am coming to you from the campus of the University of Texas at Dallas. Our International Center is here to get you visa ready. We know it's a long process. There's lots of steps. There's lots of information. We're going to dive into it and give you a strategy that's going to lead to visa success. Let's go ahead and get started. This session is designed to get you visa ready. We have a lot of slides and a lot of information. I hope you have some time to take some notes and to really get into this information because it's going to help you with your coming visa application process. Why does this session matter? Well, this session has lots of information. We're going to start off with an overview of the process from the admission to the university to visa preparation. Knowing how visa officers make decisions about who's going to get a visa is going to be very key so that you can start preparing by building clear and credible responses to the types of questions that they're going to ask you. This is going to result in you having a clear plan in order to prepare between now and whenever your visa interview is. I strongly believe that early preparation reduces stress, reduces nervousness that you might feel at the visa interview, and is going to set you up to be as successful as possible. So let's look at the big picture about who does what. Everybody has got a role to play, and everybody spends lots of time getting ready for your ability to come to the United States and become a UT Dallas Comet. At our university, of course, we spend time reviewing your transcripts, all the things that you submitted as part of your admission process. We review your documents for immigration eligibility to be able to issue your I-20. We have lots of workshops and advising sessions designed to help you be prepared to understand the next step that you're going to take on our campus. The U.S. government, of course, has a very important role, and they spend significant amounts of time gathering the information that you provide to them in the DS-160, the I-901. They do a variety of vetting. Obviously, there's the appointment process, and they make a decision. They also spend significant amounts of time and resources to be able to evaluate whether or not you're eligible to come to the university to be a student. You as a student are a critical part in this process, of course. And really, you can only control your part of it. You are responsible for preparation, gathering your documents, making sure that when you go to that interview, you are as prepared as you can possibly be. I want you to plan ahead and expect to spend 5 to 10 hours, a minimum, preparing for your visa interview. It's not something that you can do on the fly or that you should be trying to do without taking the adequate time to prepare to put your best foot forward. Let's look at the visa timeline. The first step is going to be admission. You apply for admission to the program that you're going to be studying. You provide them with your transcripts, your test scores, personal statements, whatever the requirements are for you to get an admission letter from our university and possibly even several universities. You can apply to several universities, but by the time that you are finished receiving your admissions, you need to make a decision about where you're going to be studying in the United States. The next step is to apply for the I-20. The I-20 is an immigration document issued by the school that says, yes, this is an international student and we support them in the visa process to come to the United States and study. After you get your I-20, you've made the decision about which school you're going to attend, you're going to pay the I-901 fee. It's called the SEVIS fee. You pay it directly online. It goes to manage the immigration process that's going to support you while you're in the United States. It does not go to the university. The next step is you're going to fill out the DS-160. I know there's lots of terms and forms and that you're unfamiliar with. The DS-160 is the application form you're going to fill out for the U.S. Embassy or Consulate to apply for your U.S. visa. You're going to answer questions about yourself. It's fairly extensive. And then you're going to submit that, and then you're going to set up your visa appointment. It's going to be at the nearest U.S. Embassy or Consulate in your home country. In rare circumstances, if there's no U.S. Embassy in your country, you may be able to apply at a neighboring country, or usually it's a specific country that you can attend. After your appointment is scheduled, you're going to then really focus on preparing for the visa interview. You're going to gather your documents. You always want to have all of the supporting documents in order to verify that you're eligible for the F1 visa. But then you're also going to do lots of preparation in terms of how you're going to articulate yourself during the visa interview so that you're going to leave with the highest chance of success. So each step is linear. It builds on the previous one. We always say start early and stay organized throughout the process to give yourself the best chance of success. So let's go in depth with the steps after you've been admitted. When you're at UT Dallas, the website is on the bottom for you to be able to apply for your I-20. It's a very simple process. First is going to be the admission. Second is going to be giving us a copy of your passport. It needs to be valid for more than 6 months into the future. And I recommend having a passport that's valid for the entire duration of your studies, so you don't have to worry about renewing it while you're in the United States. And then you're going to have to show sufficient funding to support yourself for 1 academic year. The expectation is that even though you have liquid funding for 1 year, you have a plan that's going to support you so that you can continue to fund yourself in the United States for the entire duration of your academic program. When you're applying for the I-20 for UT Dallas, we have simple steps in terms of going into our portal called iCommet, using your login credentials to be able to upload the information into the system so the advisors, the DSOs, can review those documents that I asked you about, your passport, your financial information. They can review that in iCommet and send you the I-20 by email, and you can use that for the next steps of the process. After you get your I-20, you're going to use your SEVIS number. It is going to be a number on the I-20. It starts with an N and has about 13 digits to go to this website to pay the I-901 fee directly to the U.S. government. As I said, this is going to be necessary for managing your immigration status while you're in the United States. And then, as I discussed, you're going to apply for the DS-160. Make sure you go to the website on the bottom and not to another website that might be similar. You don't want to be submitting your application into a non-US government website. It's going to be something that is very long. They say you should probably have about 45 minutes. I recommend having more time than that. You don't want to rush. You want to have all of your documents before you start, your passport number, any academic or employment history that you may have, any previous travel history. All of those things are going to be necessary. It is really important that you save regularly, because if it goes more than, I think, 15 or 20 minutes without you saving, it's going to time you out. You're going to have lost your work. So make sure as you're going through each page, save, save, save. Okay. And when you finish, make sure you have a digital or electronic or paper copy of your DS-160 for you to refer back to as part of your preparation. And absolutely, when you have the confirmation of submission, you want to print that out as soon as possible. You will need to have that paper confirmation page when you go to the U.S. Embassy for your visa interview. So when you're preparing, we have resources on our website to help you start to prepare for the visa interview, some of the things that you want to keep in mind, and some of the resources that we provide. I also want you to complete the Visa Ready worksheet that is associated with this workshop. Again, we want you to have a prepared planning document that's going to serve you for your visa interview preparation. You want to then, as part of the preparation, practice delivering responses to the common questions. The questions that they ask in the visa interview are pretty consistent. They might have some differences in wording here or there, but they fall into some very specific categories. So you want to make sure that you are practiced in terms of how you're going to answer that question. Not memorize, just practice. And then, of course, as part of the visa interview preparation, you want to re-review your DS-160, your I-20 documents, everything else that you have, because you want to be consistent across all of those documents. So when you go to the U.S. Embassy for your visa interview, you may have already heard there are very few questions, maybe 1 to 3 questions. Maybe you have 3 minutes. I always tell students it's going to be 3 of the most important minutes of your life. You want to make sure you're ready to perform effectively in terms of establishing your eligibility. So it's going to be very brief. In most embassies around the world, it's not going to be private. You're not going to be in an office with a visa officer. You're going to probably be in an open room, and you're going to be talking through a visa officer through a screen with other people all around. You may have to speak loudly enough so that they can hear you through the glass, even though they have a microphone. Keep in mind, there's going to be lots of background noise. So make sure that you are comfortable just expressing yourself in that crowded environment. I also encourage you to think very carefully about your body language, how you're going to present yourself, what you're going to wear. You want to establish that you're a serious student and that is eligible for the visa interview. They will make their decision pretty quickly within those 3 minutes about whether or not you're eligible for the visa. I want you to think that confidence, looking them in the eye, right? Explaining yourself clearly and coherently is going to matter a lot more than length. We don't want you to go into whole paragraphs and long stories when you're at the visa interview. You want to be clear, concise, and to the point. So when the visa officer is reviewing you and your documents during the interview, they're essentially assessing you on 3 bases. The first is going to be authenticity. The second is going to be credibility. The third is going to be eligibility. Those are 3 very important and different assessment options that they're going to be looking at. When we talk about authenticity, we're talking about being real, being genuine, being true to one's character, not being a copy or a counterfeit. Your answers to the questions must be unique to you. They cannot be something you pulled up from AI, you copied from this session, that you stole from a friend of yours. The answers must be specific to you and your story. So practicing your answers that are unique to you is going to help you reduce your nervousness, as I said, but do not memorize. Memorizing is not authentic. And actually, if they ask the question different from how you memorize it, you may not be able to think about how to answer those questions. So really, you're practicing, you're drafting answers to the questions, and you're practicing to give you a sense of preparedness, but your goal is not to be robotic, not to memorize, not to have something, scripted by someone else. They need to hear from you answers that are specific to you that could not be provided by anybody else. The second thing, as I mentioned, is credibility. When they're looking at credibility, they're wanting to see that there is alignment, that things are consistent between what you put in your DS-160, the visa application, what's in your SEVIS I-20, what's in your I-901 and other digital records, what's in supporting documents that you have, your financial documents, your bank statements, your admission letter, as well as the verbal responses in the interview. Everything must be consistent. Everything must align. If there are differences between those two, they will see it as you're not credible and perhaps that you're lying or hiding information. So make sure that everything is consistent. You say the same thing in all the different places. The third thing, as I mentioned, is eligibility. An F1 visa requires the visa officer to determine that you have met these specific 5 criteria in the law. If you don't meet these 5 criteria in your answers, you will be refused your visa. The first criteria is you must be accepted to the school, and it has to be documented on your Form I-20. The second is that you must intend to enter the United States solely for the purpose of pursuing a full course of study at an approved institution. Number 3 is that you have the intention to leave the United States at the conclusion of your activities, because the F1 visa is a temporary visa. Number 4, that you have sufficient funds to meet your financial needs. And number 5, you're adequately prepared academically and professionally to be successful in this course of study. So keep this in mind. These are critical. If you miss 1 or 2, you will be refused. So they're going to ask you a variety of questions, and I want you to think about the questions that they ask you. No matter what the question is that the visa officer asks you, and as I've said before, the questions are fairly consistent. No matter what the question is, your job is to provide information which establishes your authenticity, meaning your answers are unique to you and your situation, your credibility, meaning that they're consistent among all of your documents and your answers. And number 3, your eligibility. You meet the legal requirements for the visa. Make sure you don't lose any chance in any of your answers to address these issues. So let's look at the first area that they often ask about, which is your academic fit, whether you're academically prepared to study this program, why you're choosing this program. There's going to be lots of questions about why this specific degree, why did you choose this institution, maybe even why you chose the United States or Texas as a state where you will be studying. They want to ask about how it fits into your academic and professional backgrounds, and then how it ties into your future plans to return to your home country. Many of you choose schools, or rather as part of your choosing of schools, you're looking at rankings, you're looking at different other prestigious markers for a school. But really, that's not an answer that's going to help you in the visa process. Why are you specifically choosing this particular institution, separate for the rankings, separate from the reputations? Why is this a good fit for your particular life? That's what you need to answer. So when, as an example, they ask you, what's your purpose of coming to the United States? When you think about what that question is about, it is testing you on several of those legal eligibility requirements. Do you have the intention to study full-time in F1 status in the United States? Is your purpose for your degree or your study aligning with what is written on your I-20? Are you adequately prepared for the study, either because of previous education that you may have had or previous work experience? And then, of course, your intent to return. I want you to make sure that you are going to answer this question thinking about all of these things. To start off, let's look at some sample answers, okay? And we're going to do this pretty commonly about ways you can answer this question. So what is your purpose of coming to the United States? Here's an option that a person can answer. I want to study in the US because the education is better than in my home country, and I'll decide my long-term plans later based on the opportunities. This is not a strong answer. It does not give a clear academic plan that's aligned with the I-20. There's no defined purpose. There's a weak intention to return to the home country, and there just signals that you are not really prepared to come to the United States and fulfill a specific purpose. When we look at a second option, I'm coming to the US to explore new educational opportunities and gain international experience. This is too vague. Again, it does not reference your academic program, your I-20 or specific study. It's not clearly tied into your academic purpose. It absolutely also does not talk about departing the United States. Here's another choice of how you can answer this question. My purpose is to study and find a good job, job opportunities in the US after graduation. This is going to be a big red flag. It suggests that you have the intent to immigrate into the United States. It also is focused on employment and not on study. The F1 visa is a student visa category. It is not a work visa. Your purpose must be to study, and that must be very clear. And that really needs to be the only purpose that you have. In this answer, there are two purposes: to study and find a good job. And that is inconsistent with the student visa. Then that is why this answer is going to fail in terms of being adequate for establishing eligibility for the F1 visa. This fourth option is a strong answer to this question. My purpose is to pursue a full-time master's degree in information technology at UT Dallas, as is shown on my I-20. I've been admitted to this program because of my background in computer science. I am going to gain specialized skills in data systems. And then when I finish, I'm going to return to my home country to work in the growing tech sector. This is a strong answer. It covers your I-20 acceptance and information that's on your I-20. It shows full-time intention to study. It shows you're academically prepared due to your background in computer science. There's a clear purpose, and it demonstrates an intent to return. So when you're thinking about how to prepare your answers, I want you to think through this. How much in 2 sentences, because that's what it is. Answering this takes about 20 seconds, which is the amount of time you should plan for answering a question. and it covers many, if not most of all of the things that are required to show that you're eligible for the F1 visa. So let's go ahead and think about purpose. I want you to pick the best answers to these questions. Why did you choose this university? Why did you apply to other universities? And what you will study specifically. In the worksheet, you're going to see A, B, C, D options for answering these questions. I want you to look at the worksheet. I want you to pick the best answer from those options and think about why that's the best answer and how it establishes your eligibility through all 5 of those criteria for the F1 visa. Now that you have finished the poll, the questions, I want you to take some time to practice yourself. There are 5 questions in your worksheet. I want you to spend some time and write at maximum 2 to 3 sentences. Really try to keep it in 2 sentences, clear and concise. They don't need to be run-on sentences, answering these questions. When you're thinking about questions that are focused on your academics, I want you to make sure you're including the specific program and the university that are listed on your I-20. I want you to think about including your background and academic preparation, including any work experience or certifications that you may have had, and then make sure you end with how this program of study ties into your plans in your home country. So the 5 questions I want you to take some time to practice with are: number 1, what are your academic goals in the US? Number 2, do you know what classes, coursework, and electives you plan to take for the upcoming semester? Now, this question may require you to do some research on the website for your academic program to understand your degree program. If you have not already done so, this is a great opportunity for you to take the time to make sure you really understand what are you going to be studying in your first years? How many required core classes? What are your electives like? Are there any tracks or concentrations within your major? Make sure you know your program of study inside and out so that you can answer this question. Where will you be studying while in the United States? Again, what's your purpose for going to the United States? And it should be different from what I had in the previous slide as a correct answer for the purpose. And then lastly, when did you graduate and what have you been doing since then? Again, it doesn't matter what the question is. You want to answer it and include the information that will allow them to see that you are eligible for the F1 visa. Take some time to practice in this session and even after, and you can refine your answers to make sure that you understand how you're going to answer this question. Let's move to the next step, which is funding. This is one of the most scrutinized areas in terms of the visa process. They want to make sure that, yes, you have funds for the first year, but also for the subsequent years that you're going to be here studying. They don't want you to come here and either have to rely on employment, whether lawful employment on campus or off campus, or much worse, illegal or unlawful employment in the United States. So it doesn't really matter what your funding sources are, whether it's institutional funding from the university, such as an assistantship, a fellowship, a scholarship, any other funds that you're given. It could be personal funds, your savings, your sponsor support, bank statements. It could actually even be student loans. We see many students who have student loans. Just making sure that you have documentation that supports what's on your I-20. What you have on your I-20 as your source of funding must be the same as what you're explaining to them in the visa interview. As I said, that credibility and alignment is key. Additionally, what the source is not as important as the fact that it's a strong and reliable source. It's not going to suddenly run out. Your parents are not going to suddenly run out of money next year. Your sponsor's not going to stop funding you. The university is not going to stop funding you. They want to make sure that the source of funding is strong and is going to continue for the entire duration of your studies. So let's look at a very common question. How will you manage your expenses while you're in the United States? So again, they're trying to establish your credibility. And also, is there a risk that you might not have enough money to finish? Is your funding sufficient and reliable? Do you understand your financial situation? Will you need to rely on employment, unauthorized or even authorized? And is your story in answering these questions consistent with all of the other documents? So let's look at 4 options. How will you manage your expenses? I have a loan. That does not give sufficient information for them to understand that your funding is sufficient and that is durable. If you have a loan, you can say, I've obtained a loan from this company. This is how much money the loan is. This is how it's going to be dispersed. And this is how it compares to the cost of attendance. It is more than the cost of attendance. It is equal to the cost of attendance, etc. You'll need to make sure you have more information about your loan and including your repayment amounts if they inquire about that. Another option, I have a scholarship that provides in-state tuition. My father will pay for the rest. This is also insufficient. It does not show that your funding is durable. It does not show that it is equal to the cost of your tuition and fees and other expenses. It is insufficient to establish that your funds are sufficient. So you can say, I have a scholarship that provides in-state tuition. As you can see on my I-20, the value of that scholarship is this amount of money. I am then required to pay the rest of the balance, this amount of money. My father is my sponsor. This is where his source of funding comes from, his salary, his wages, his savings, whatever it is. Have that information about where all of that source of funding is and that it's going to be sufficient to meet the estimated cost of attendance for the first year and subsequent years. Here's C. Here's another option. All expenses are covered through DSO verified funds shown in my financial documents that I have here and on my I-20, including a scholarship and funds from my parents' salaries. They're going to cover the full cost of tuition and living expenses. I understand my primary purpose is study. I am not going to need to rely on employment. That is a solid answer that gives the visa officers a lot of information to determine that you have sufficient funding. It also talks about that you understand your purpose is study. And it references the information on the I-20. This is a very solid answer. And then lastly, which is another poor answer, my parents are supporting me. It does answer the question. However, it does not give enough information for the visa officer to determine that you are eligible for an F1 visa. So let's talk about funding. In the visa worksheet that you have, there are 3 additional questions, and I want you to look at the options A, B, and C, and D, and determine what is the best answer. Number 6, can you explain your financial documents? Number 7, who is funding your education? Number 8, have you received any scholarships for your education? I want you to look at those. They may not be pertinent for you, but maybe you don't have a scholarship, etc. But I want you to look at it and pick the correct answer. This is helping you train yourself to be able to understand what makes for a good answer and what is an insufficient answer for a visa interview. All right, now that you've finished answering those questions, let's practice. I want you to take some time to answer these questions for yourself. You're going to write it down in the worksheet, the answers being as comprehensive as you can, making sure your answer is credible, meaning it's unique to you. It is authentic, and it is also establishes your eligibility for the F1 visa. I want you to take some time to draft some answers to this question, and I want to ensure that you answer these questions in a way that establishes that you meet all 3 requirements, that you are authentic, your answers reflect you uniquely, your story, your choices, your funding. Number 2, that it is credible. It aligns with the information on your I-20 and any other supporting documentation that you have. And number 3, it establishes that you're eligible for an F1 visa. Take the time. I want answers that are only 2, ideally 2 sentences, not more than 3 sentences, something that you're going to be able to answer in 20 or 30 seconds that covers all of that. Go ahead and take the time to do that now. The next section of common questions that they ask about are going to be related to your non-immigrant intent and your travel history. When we talk about non-immigrant intent, keep in mind that immigrant visas are for those who are going to come to the United States and remain permanently. That is not what you're applying for. You're applying for an F1 student visa. It is a non-immigrant visa, which means that you cannot have the intention to remain in the United States permanently. You have a temporary intention to come to the United States to be a full-time student. They're going to need to ask you questions that establish whether or not you intend to come to the US permanently or you're going to depart. I want you to know that visa officers are required to assume that every single person intends to come to the United States permanently. You have to convince them otherwise through your answers, through clearly articulating that you will go home and why you will go home. Along with this section are going to be questions about your travel history. They want to know, do you have a history of following the immigration and visa rules of another country? You may not have, this may be the first time you're departing the United States, but you want to be very clear that you understand the responsibility of following the rules of another country and returning back to your home country. This is, again, another place where strong preparation makes a difference in terms of articulating your non-immigrant intent. So let's look at a sample question. If you're asked, what are your plans after you finish your studies? Which is a very common question. It's got a couple of different variations, but it is very common. Here are 4 options that we're going to look at together. A, I hope to stay in the US after graduation and find a job there using OPT. Now, OPT, if you don't know, is optional practical training. It allows you to remain in the United States as part of your F1 status to work after you graduate. You can have the intention to have to work and remain in the United States using OPT. However, this answer by itself seems to imply that you have the intent to remain in the United States, because I don't see anything that states that you understand your obligation to go home. In fact, in this answer, you're stating that you hope to stay in the United States. So this is a very poor answer that does not help you establish that you're eligible for an F1 visa. The second option, B, after completing my degree, I plan to return to my home country and apply the knowledge and skills I gained in the US to my professional field. My goal is to work in a role related to my degree, contribute to my home economy, which really needs the expertise I will gain in the United States. This is a good answer. It clearly states an intention to return to your home country. It explains why you intend to return to your home country, which is to contribute your expertise and skills to your home country. It's a public service motivation to return to your home country. It talks about what you're going to gain from your academic purpose. This is a very strong answer. C, I'm not sure yet. Maybe I'll go to graduate school. Maybe I'll get a job. I'll decide when I finish my bachelor's. I understand that you may not be sure whether you're going to continue with additional education after you finish these studies, but this is the time to ensure that the visa officer understands that you will return to your home country after you finish your F1 studies. Okay, so even if that you're going to have a second degree afterwards, if you're studying, you're still going to be in F1 status. You can say, after I finish my education in the United States, I will go back to my home country. These are the reasons why. That education may be 1 degree or 2 degrees, but either way, you're clearly articulating your desire to not remain in the United States permanently. Lastly, another answer that may be accurate, but is not sufficient to establish F1 visa. After graduation, I hope to find a good job in my field and build my career. You don't talk about non-immigrant intent. You don't talk about anything else that's going to give you an approved visa. D is not a strong answer. B is the strongest answer. So when you are looking at your answers or the poll questions next, I want you to think about answers that hit as many of those requirements for your legal eligibility as possible. So let's go to a poll question. We have a couple of these poll questions in this category. The first one is, do you have an immediate relative in the US? Here are three options. Yes, my auntie's here. She lives in Houston. I'll be staying with her. There's a lot of red flags with this. There's nothing wrong with having a family member in the US. Many people have family members in the US. And by the way, the government knows your family members in the US. It's not a secret. They know that you have family members in the US. It should have been something you discussed in the DS-160 or that they know during the databases. The fact that this does not address non-immigrant intent. She lives in Houston. Houston's very far from Dallas. You cannot go to classes from Houston to Dallas. It's a 5-hour drive each way. So if you are staying with immediate relatives, make sure you understand whether you can actually commute to campus, because it can be a red flag if you're staying with them and they're nowhere near our university. B, yes, I have an immediate relative in the US. However, my purpose in coming to the US is to complete my degree at UT Dallas. My long-term plan is to return to my home country after graduation and complete my degree there. I'm focused on using this education to create opportunities for myself and family at home. This is a strong answer. You answer the question directly. I have an immediate relative. There's no need to go into all kinds of details about whether they're your auntie or your mother's sister or your father's sister or any of that stuff. You answer the question, you bring it back to the points that you need to make to establish that you're eligible for the F1 visa. Your purpose is to be a student. Your long-term plan is to return to your home country. And the reason why you're going to return to your country is to create opportunities for yourself and your family at home. This is a strong answer. Do you have immediate relatives in the US? Yes. Or I don't think so. While these may be accurate answers, they don't help you get an F1 visa. As I said at the beginning, every question is an opportunity to show them that you're eligible for the F1 visa. Don't waste that opportunity with answers like C and D. Here's another one. Why do you want to study in the US instead of your home country? Option A, I want to study in the US because it's better than studying in my home country. It gives me more opportunities. Option B, life is better in the US for me to get an education and build my future. C, US universities have strong academic resources. The experience will help me develop skills to help me find a job after graduation. And D, I am choosing to study in the US at UT Dallas specifically because it offers specialized coursework, research, and practical training that align closely with my academic background and future career goals. This education will help me gain skills I can use when I return to my home country to build my career. What is the strongest answer? It's obvious that it's D. It hits multiple points. Why you're coming to UT Dallas, what is it about the school that aligns with you, your purpose in coming to the United States, your intention to your home country, and the reason why you're going to be going back to your home country. D is a strong answer. So we have 6 more questions. I want you to take some time to practice on your own answering these questions in your worksheet. You want to make sure you're thinking about your authenticity, your credibility, your eligibility for an F1 visa in 2 or 3 sentences maximum, something that you're going to be able to say in about 20 to 30 seconds. The questions in your worksheet are, do you have immediate relatives in the US? What are your plans after you finish your studies? Have you traveled outside your country in the last 5 years? Are you married? Do you have children? Why did you choose Texas? Why do you want to study in the US instead of your home country? Okay. With the last one, and really with anything, any of the answers, I want to make sure that you avoid criticizing your home country. Because if you strongly criticize your home country or the resources there, it's going to be very hard for you to convince them that you have the intent to go to your home country. Plus, obviously, you should have some pride about your country. So you can state the reasons why you're choosing to come to the United States without criticizing your home country in any significant manner. So take some time, write your sample answers to this. Think about how you're going to tie in all of those requirements for the F1 visa if you're asked a question similar to this. Take that time to do this now. There are two other questions you may get asked in the visa interview. Have you experienced harm in your home country? Do you fear returning to your home country? These are questions that the visa officers are going to be asking to determine whether or not you're likely to try to seek asylum in the United States after arrival, because you have a fear of going back to your home country. So be prepared to answer those questions as well. Let's talk next about some common interview mistakes. Here's some key things that are a problem. Contradictory documents and statements. This is a big red flag. They will assume that you're lying or hiding or misrepresenting information. Number two, giving them insufficient information to establish that you are eligible for the F1 visa. I hope by this point you'll know the 5 things that you need to show to establish legally eligibility for the F1 visa. If you don't give them that information, you will be refused an F1 visa. And then lastly is nervousness. It is normal to be nervous. You would be foolish to not be nervous. But I want you to use that nervousness to power you, to give you some adrenaline and some energy to do well. Don't let that nervousness get in the way of articulating your eligibility for the F1 visa. This is why I believe practice is important, but you're going to have to think about breathing or doing some other strategies that may work for you to keep yourself calm and focused on your goal. So we finished the bulk of the session. I want you to take note of the following next steps so that you're prepared for your visa interview. Again, re-review all of the information that is written down that the visa officer may be looking at when they're interviewing you. What's on your DS-160? What's on your I-20? Make sure you know your degree plan, your admission letter, everything related to your time in the United States. Re-review it and make sure it is accurate so that you can correct anything if it's wrong, but also to refresh your memory so that your verbal statements can match the documents. I next want you to take additional time, because I know we may have rushed through this, working on drafting your responses to the common questions. You may need to revisit this a couple of times to make sure you have answers that are authentic and credible and accurate, that cover all of the things that you need to cover. I then want you to practice articulating them without memorizing them. You can work with a friend who maybe is also trying to go to the US, or a family member. Have them listen to you, ask the questions a different way in different orders, so you can practice expressing yourself in answering these questions. And then I want you, if you haven't already, attend a mock visa interview session with advisors in our office. You can do several. You don't have to just do one. We do have students who do 2 and 3 of these, so that when they go to the visa interview, they're prepared. They've received feedback from the advisors in our office, and they're ready. They're really ready for that visa interview. And then take some time to think of your day of plan. What are you going to wear? There's nothing wrong with wearing a suit. You want to make sure you're presenting yourself in a specific way. Think about what you need to take. Organize your documents. Please don't have your documents in a mess. If you're taking documents, make sure they have tabs on them, or they're organized in some way that you can get to whatever is needed quickly. There's nothing worse than trying to shuffle through papers and dropping papers. Don't do that. And then practice and think about how you're going to stay calm. Sometimes just being there, waiting for your turn. You might see other people getting denied, or other people having emotional reactions. You don't want to get your calmness interfered with by other people's emotions. You've got to find a way and a strategy for staying true to your goal and how you're going to deliver the information and how you're going to convince them that you're eligible for this visa. So some final advice and encouragement. Really, it's the same thing that I've been telling you. Be authentic, demonstrate credibility, and establish your eligibility. I know that you can do it. We are here to help you. Feel free to connect with us, reach out to us. We want you to be successful. Good luck.